We're going to go back now to the story that we were seeing the report about earlier about men's mental health, particularly suffering from postnatal depression. And we're joined now to talk more about it by Dr. Andy Mayers. He's a mental health campaigner and principal academic in psychology at Bournemouth University. Hello, Andy. Welcome to you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We were hearing in that report that it's not a new thing, men suffering from postnatal depression, but we are hearing about it now.
Absolutely. I mean, these problems have been going on for very many years. But now that, as the gentleman was saying earlier, we're more confident to get men to be speaking up about these things. And now we're able to start looking at ways to be able to provide the support that they need.
And with the research that you've been doing, we think that there are about 10% of men who suffer from postnatal depression. But I mean, what's your perspective on that? Do you think the number could be much higher?
I think it really depends on what we're actually calling sort of postnatal depression and mental illness during the pregnancy and after the baby's born. And we know from the evidence we've had so far that certainly around about 10% of fathers are experiencing mental health problems in some way. Whether it's actually postnatal depression, like mothers get, is another matter, but they certainly are suffering.
How does it manifest exactly and when typically? Is it usually immediately after the birth, or can it be, you know, a year or even more afterwards?
OK, well, this really does depend on what we're actually looking at, because the work that I've certainly been doing at Bournemouth University and with colleagues across the country and with campaigners like Mark Williams is there is a number of ways in which fathers can suffer. First of all, we need to be able to give them the toolkit to be able to support their wife or partner should she develop a mental health problem, and that's going to have an impact on him. Also, in a way in which it's going to he may develop mental health problems himself. Now, in terms of postnatal depression, yes, that could certainly be within the first few days after the baby's born, a sudden change in relationships and the overwhelming feeling of responsibility and all those other things that might be changing and changes in his emotions. But one of the key things we also need to look at is those fathers who are more increasingly in the birthing room, who witness their wife or partner have a significantly traumatic birth where her life is potentially threatened, and as is the child, and the impact on him can be enormous. Now, that may not develop until sort of months after the baby's born, and we're then looking at things like post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's no support for that at all, really, at the moment.
Well, you took my next question out of my mouth. I was going to say how much of this really is to do with witnessing the trauma of the birth, and how much of it is just the change in life and what that means, or is any of it for men hormonal as it is for women?
OK, I mean, first of all, it's not certainly when we're looking at postnatal depression, the common perception that it's hormonal for women. That's only partly true. A very, very small part of postnatal depression for women is to do with hormones. It's many other things, and equally so for fathers. So, yes, there are hormonal factors. Certainly there is evidence that when the baby's first born, the levels of testosterone drop dramatically. So that could open him up to all sorts of emotional feelings he didn't have before. But beyond the hormones, it is a lot of psychological factors about the change in circumstances, about the responsibility, about the coping. But certainly, if they witness a traumatic birth, I'm not talking about routine births, traumatic births where there's potential loss of life or serious injury, then that can affect the fathers enormously, and we need to be able to give them the support to be able to deal with that.
OK, all right, we've got to leave it there. Dr. Andy Mayers, really appreciate your time. Sorry we kept you waiting.